used to think my ideas had to be perfect before I shared them. So instead, I had deep conversations with books, underlining passages, scribbling notes in the margins, even leaving a thoughtful beside a paragraph. But no one ever saw them. Why? Because I believed that half-formed ideas weren't worth sharing, that only polished ideas deserved an audience. Then I read Show Your Work and realized the most relatable insights often live in those moments, not just the grand conclusions. This channel became my experiment for sharing earlier in the process. My videos are still carefully researched. I still triple check my sources, but now I share it when I'm working through ideas, not just once I've mastered them. The surprise? Those thinking out loud videos where I unpack a book I'm still processing are the ones that spark the best conversations. Because real learning isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask the questions out loud. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Shannon, your Barefoot Librarian. After years as a librarian, English teacher, and holistic nutritionist with a master's degree in education, I can confirm most nonfiction is 90% fluff. But when a book actually delivers, I become your personal curator, testing advice in real life. Whether it's research-backed strategies or, in this case, Kleon's raw wisdom about putting your work out there. No hype, no fluff, just the good stuff. Here's why this book matters. Austin Kleon isn't just talking to people who want to be creators. He's speaking to anyone who's ever fallen down a research rabbit hole and wanted to share what they found, or hesitated to post their thoughts because they didn't feel expert enough. Maybe you've scribbled notes in a book's margins, saved an article to read later, or had a thought that made you pause, but kept it to yourself. That's exactly what this book is about. Sharing isn't about self-promotion or proving how much you know, it's about joining a conversation. When you put your ideas out there, even imperfectly, you give others permission to do the same. You find people who say,
"Wait, I thought that too!"
Or,
"Have you seen this other angle?"
It's not about going viral, it's about those small, meaningful exchanges that make learning feel less lonely. That's what I've discovered since starting this channel, and it's why I think this book is worth discussing. All right, chapter 1. You don't have to be a genius. Let's talk about one of the biggest myths out there, the idea that you need to be some kind of genius or expert to share your work. Austin Kleon calls this out in Show Your Work with a concept he calls she-nius. Instead of lone genius, real creativity happens in communities, like students trading book recommendations, writers swapping drafts, or even strangers geeking out in the spice aisle. You might think, but I'm no genius. Perfect, that's your amateur advantage. In my classroom, I'd pair students who just grasped a concept with those still struggling. Why? Because someone fresh from the confusion explains it better than any expert. Their messy notes cut through the noise in a way my polished PowerPoint slides never could. Here's the amateur advantage. First, clarity from proximity. When you're fresh from the struggle, like a student who just untangled a confusing chapter, you explain it in ways experts can't because you remember what not knowing feels like. Second, permission to be messy. Imperfect shares, like my tech bloopers or dog photobombing, invite others to lean in and say,
"Me too,"
instead of feeling like they need to perform. Now, I'm the amateur. My studio is this.
I gotta go put this crap up. I ended up planting herbs.
I love it! That's awesome!
They've been sitting out there, and of course it's been wet, and so I was like, I can get this done before I have to leave.
I'm filming at my mother-in-law's, by the way. She has an herb garden outside. It's very lovely. I'm tech clueless. Ask my husband, who's rescued me from editing disasters. Then I read Show Your Work. Okay. But Kleon's right. My chaos isn't a flaw, it's fuel. When I share unfinished ideas that aren't yet fully fleshed out, tech bloopers, dog cameos, it sparks conversations. Genius isn't about experts. It's about all of us tossing ideas into the pot. Your messy share today might be someone's lifeline tomorrow. Hit publish. Your tribe's waiting. Chapter 2, think process, not product. Austin Kleon makes a radical case in this chapter. What if the real value of your work isn't the polished final product, but the messy human process of creating it? Take Nicholas Cole, a writer who bypassed traditional publishing's years-long waiting game by sharing raw, unpolished essays on Quora and Medium. Instead of hoarding his best ideas for some hypothetical book deal, he posted daily, short pieces on philosophy, failure, and ambition. Not masterpieces, experiments. And something magical happened. Readers responded. Comments became his editors. Likes and shares lit up his blind spots. By the time he published books like The Art and Business of Online Writing, he had already built an audience who'd watched him refine his voice in real time. This is Kleon's process over product in action. Cole's work thrived because he treated writing as a conversation, not a monologue. Every draft, every half-baked thought, every reader's "but what about" became part of his creative DNA. But you don't need to be a creator to benefit. A nurse sharing her trial and error IV insertion tips on a Slack channel saves her team hours of frustration. A first-time landlord documenting their journey in a local real estate Facebook group turns their mistakes into a roadmap for others. Even a parent posting their 10 failed toddler meal hacks before finding one that works becomes a lifeline for exhausted caregivers. The lesson? Your process matters to someone. You don't need permission or polish to start. Share your journey as it unfolds. Your next great idea, or someone else's, might be just one comment away. Chapter 3, share something small every day. Kleon's point here is that daily sharing, even tiny imperfect snippets, builds creative momentum. Think of it like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Writers posting micro essays, chefs sharing kitchen hacks, teachers jotting daily classroom wins. Consistency compounds into trust and clarity. Full transparency, I'm not on social media. No Instagram, no TikTok, just this channel, my blog, and the occasional email to my subscribers. Daily videos, not happening. But Kleon's right about the spirit of consistency. For me, that looks like weekly-ish videos, a pace that lets me dive deep without burning out. Blog snippets, raw notes like why this biography wrecked me, or my highlighting system is a mess, help. Real life shares, recommending books and actually telling people why they matter. The lesson I took away from this is that sharing isn't about platforms, but showing up where you are. Your share could be a voice memo to a friend about a podcast you found interesting, a post-it note on your fridge or a coworker's desk with a quote that stuck, or 3 bullet points in a journal labeled "Things I Learned." Frequency matters, but so does sustainability. I interpreted Kleon's daily as a metaphor and think that your rhythm is what counts, but Austin, if I'm wrong and you ever watch this, please call me out. Chapter 4, open up your cabinet of curiosities. We all have those things that light us up. The podcasts we can't stop talking about, the quotes that stick with us, the songs that make us feel something deep. But too often, we keep those inspirations tucked away, consuming without curating. The truth is, our creative DNA isn't just shaped by what we make, it's also shaped by what we love. That's why it's so important to open up our cabinet of curiosities and share what fascinates us. I've started keeping a running list of books that changed me. Not just for myself, but to share with others. I love when someone says, I read that book because you mentioned it and it really resonated. That's the magic of making your taste visible. You never know who needs the exact spark that lit something up in you. Writers do this all the time by sharing their reading lists. Musicians talk about the artist who influenced them. Even Leonardo da Vinci kept detailed notebooks filled with sketches, notes, and observations. His own personal archive of curiosity. For me, I keep track of the things that inspire me in simple ways. Sticky notes in books, a journal where I jot down ideas, even voice memos when something strikes me while I'm on the go. Over time, I've noticed patterns. The same themes keep grabbing my attention, and that's a clue about what really matters to me creatively. Paying attention to those threads helps me connect the dots and refine my voice. At the end of the day, my blog and even this YouTube channel are kind of living scrapbooks, an ongoing collection of things I'm learning, figuring out, and finding meaningful. The more I share, the more I realize that creativity isn't just about what we produce, it's also about what we collect and pass along. So, what's in your cabinet of curiosities? And more importantly, who are you sharing it with? Chapter 5, tell good stories. Stories have a kind of magic to them. I realized this early on when I first became a librarian. I'd walk into a room full of preschoolers, wiggling, whispering, completely incapable of sitting still. And the second I cracked open a book and started reading, total silence, wide eyes. They were in. How could just telling a story shift the entire atmosphere? But that's the power of a narrative. Facts alone don't stick. Stories do. That's why great communicators don't just share information, they shape it into something compelling. Every good story has a beginning, middle, and end. There's conflict or tension, something to keep us leaning in. And there's always a character we can root for, even if that character is you. Jesus understood this better than anyone. He didn't just teach in bullet points, he created stories. When he wanted to explain God's love, he didn't just say, God welcomes sinners back. He told the story of the prodigal son. When he wanted people to grasp what it means to love your neighbor, he didn't give a definition. He told the parable of the Good Samaritan. Thousands of years later, those stories still resonate because they make truth tangible. I used to think my best blog post needed to sound professional, like I was delivering polished insights from a podium. Turns out, the posts people connect with most are the ones where I just tell the real story, failures and all. Instead of saying, this book changed my life, it's more powerful to share how it did. Maybe it was a conversation that shifted my perspective or a hard moment that forced me to grow. When I own my story, messy parts included, it resonates so much more than just stating facts. The best part? We all have stories worth telling. And when we tell them well, we just don't pass along information, we create moments that stick. So, what's the story only you can tell? Chapter 6, Teach What You Know, How Generosity Builds Legacy. Austin Kleon's Show Your Work makes a radical case for teaching as an act of creative survival. You don't need expertise, you just need to care enough to pass it on. It isn't about polished lectures or gatekeeping knowledge, it's about inviting others into your process so their curiosity refines your understanding and your shared mess becomes a roadmap for collective growth. Few embody this principle better than Julia Child, the culinary icon who turned kitchen blunders into a revolution. When she published Mastering the Art of French Cooking in 1961, critics dismissed her audience as
Servantless American cooks.
But Julia, who once mistook liver for duck pate, wrote for beginners like herself. People who needed to know how to boil an egg before tackling coq au vin. I hope I said that right. On her TV show, she dropped chickens, flipped omelets, and laughed through disasters, insisting, if you're alone in the kitchen, who's going to know? Her genius wasn't in flawless soufflés, but in showing the process, breaking quiche Lorraine into 18 steps, championing dollar store gadgets, and airing failures as proudly as successes. Cooking is like love, she said. Enter with abandon, or not at all. This mirrors what unfolded in my classroom. Kleon's amateur advantage came alive when I paired students who just untangled a concept with peers still struggling with it. A kid who'd struggled with thesis statements the week prior would explain it in slang-filled analogies that clicked faster than my rubrics. And whenever I admitted,
I don't know, let's research this together,
the room would buzz with a different energy. Students pulled out phones, debated sources, and scribbled theories on the whiteboard. Teaching isn't about having answers, it's about asking better questions. History's great teachers and ancient wisdom prove that generosity compounds. The Bible's parable of the talents warns, whoever hoards what they're given will lose it. Those who invest generously gain more. Matthew 25:29. Leonardo da Vinci filled 13,000 pages with sketches and ideas he never patented, leaving a trove for future innovators. Benjamin Franklin published Poor Richard's Almanac for common folk, then used its success to fund libraries, turning frugal proverbs into a literacy movement. Even Proverbs 11:24 and 25 rings true. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. A generous person will prosper. Julia Child and Kleon agree. Scarcity mindset, if I share, I'll lose my edge, is a lie. Abundance, the belief that sharing fuels collective growth, is where legacy thrives. When you teach, you're not just handing out recipes, you're planting seeds in a genius, Kleon's term for collective ecosystems, where your half-baked ideas become someone else's breakthrough, and their questions circle back to deepen your own work. Chapter 7, Don't Turn into Human Spam. Kleon's message here is a refreshing gut check. If you want people to engage with your work, don't be the person who talks only about themselves. Instead, be a fan first. Have you ever met someone who only shows up when they need something? Whether it's a coworker who only emails when they need a favor, or that one Facebook friend who never comments except to promote their latest side hustle, it's exhausting and it doesn't work. Creativity is not a one-way street. The best creators, the ones who build meaningful, lasting connections, aren't just broadcasting their own work, they're actively engaging with others. They comment before they post. They ask questions before they give answers. They're curious, not just promotional. Take the NCIS fandom. Yes, I'm bringing it back. Abby Shudo. She didn't just show up in the lab, drop her forensic results, and walk away. She was part of the team. She listened, collaborated, and built trust, which made her insights more valuable. Likewise, if you want people to care about what you share, start by caring about what they share. Kleon suggests a simple rule. Be a fan first. Instead of dropping links to your latest project everywhere, try commenting on a blog post that made you think without plugging your own. Or engaging in a conversation on social media without an agenda. Another great thing to do is genuinely recommending someone else's work, just because it's good. The irony, this generosity creates way more opportunities than self-promotion ever could. Because when you show up with curiosity and kindness, people naturally become curious about you too. Chapter 8, learn to take a punch. Putting your work out into the world feels a little like standing on stage in a spotlight. Kind of exciting, but also terrifying. Because once you share something, it's open to feedback. And not all feedback is created equal. Early on, I thought all criticism was worth my attention. If someone had something negative to say, surely that meant I had messed up, right? But I've learned there is a big difference between helpful critique and pointless hate. Some feedback makes you better. Other comments are just noise. The key is knowing which is which. My friend, not everyone who criticizes you is worth listening to. There will always be people who just want to tear things down. They're not your audience and they're not offering anything useful. If Walt Disney had listened when his editor fired him for lacking imagination, we wouldn't have Mickey Mouse or Disneyland. If every author stopped writing after their first rejection, there'd be a lot fewer books in the world. The truth is, rejection and criticism are not stop signs. They're part of the creative process. When I worked with students on presentations, we had a system called Glow and Grow. After each presentation, classmates would share something great, a glow, something to improve, a grow, and ask a thoughtful question. It kept feedback balanced, encouraging, but also constructive. I wish I had applied that mindset to my own creative work earlier, because the best feedback challenges you to improve, but it also acknowledges what's working really well. I love the phrase, thick skin, soft heart. It means you don't let criticism shut you down, but you also stay open enough to learn. I used to dread the idea of negative feedback. Now I see it as a filter. The right people will stick around, and the rest, they were never my people anyway. So the next time you get criticism, ask yourself, is this helpful? If it is, use it to grow. If it's not, let it roll off. Either way, keep going. Chapter 9, sell out. For the longest time, I thought making money from creative work felt icky. Like real artists, writers, and teachers were supposed to be in it for the love of the craft, not the paycheck. But here's the thing, passion doesn't pay the bills. And if you want to keep creating, you need to find a way to make it sustainable. Selling your work isn't selling out, it's staying in the game. The truth is, art and money coexist. The books, courses, and resources that have impacted me the most, they exist because their creators figured out a way to make them financially viable. If they hadn't, their ideas might have stayed locked in a notebook somewhere, completely unseen. Even scripture acknowledges this. Do not muzzle an ox while it's treading out the grain. Deuteronomy 25:4. Paul quotes this when he's talking about the right for workers to earn their keep. 1 Timothy 5:18. If we believe our work has value, why would we hesitate to let it sustain us? But here's the tricky part. The moment you ask someone to open their wallet, you find out how much they really value your work. In Show Your Work, Austin Kleon shares a story about his friend John T. Unger, a poet who once recited a poem that deeply moved a man. The man told him, "That was incredible. Your poem changed my life." Unger smiled and replied, "Thank you. I actually have a book of my poetry. Would you like to buy a copy for $5? The man hesitated, suddenly backpedaling. Unger shook his head and said, wow, how valuable is your life then? It's a striking example of how people say they value something until they have to invest in it. And honestly, that's okay. The right people will see the value and support your work. The goal isn't to force anyone, it's to create something worth investing in. I'm still figuring out what this looks like for me. How do I share valuable ideas while also making my work sustainable? It's an open conversation I want to keep having because the goal isn't just to create, it's to keep creating long term. Chapter 10, stick around. The secret to success? Keep going. It sounds simple, but it's often the hardest part. Most people quit too soon. The truth is, longevity wins. Those who keep showing up, even when things feel small, slow, or like they're not going anywhere, are the ones who eventually break through. Success rarely happens overnight, but consistent effort leads to progress, even when it's not immediately visible. I've realized that consistency, not perfection, is what matters. There will be messy moments, days when it feels like nothing is working, and mistakes that can feel discouraging. But I've learned that the key is to keep showing up, even on the hard days. Improvement will come with time, but it's in the steady effort that really builds momentum. In my life, I've encountered the dip in so many different areas. Whether it's my physical health, relationships, or career, I've hit those tough moments when things feel like they're at a standstill. And I've wondered if it's worth pushing through. But what I've learned is that the dip is actually where growth happens the most. It's those moments when we push through, even when it's uncomfortable, that make us stronger and more capable. Muhammad Ali once said, "I don't count my sit-ups. I only start counting when it starts hurting." Whew. That's when the real work begins. As I grow, so will my work, and that's the beauty of it. Sometimes the most exciting breakthroughs happen when we allow ourselves to change and adapt. The key is to keep moving forward, even if it means recalibrating as we go. And here's a truth I'm still learning. Rest is just as important as perseverance. Burnout is real, and it can hit when you least expect it. It's okay to step back and recharge, but the important part is to not quit entirely. Giving yourself space to rest is what lets you come back stronger. Just as important as pushing through the tough moments is recognizing when you need to pause and care for yourself. Though I'm still in the early stages of this creative journey, I've seen how applying the idea of the dip in my life has helped me overcome challenges. The moments where I want to give up are often the moments right before something significant happens. So I'm learning to embrace the dips because I know that if I stick around, I'll get closer to the breakthrough. At the heart of Show Your Work, Austin Kleon invites us to embrace the messy, unfinished journey of creation. Now, it's your turn to show your work. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Share that raw idea, the book you're reading, the questions you're asking. Drop a comment below or send me an email about something you've been thinking through lately. Let's keep this conversation going because learning and creating is so much more fun when we do it together. You're not alone in this process, and I'm excited to hear what you're working on. If there's one thing I've learned from Kleon's approach, it's that the value isn't in perfection, it's in participation. The more we show up, share our process, and engage with others, the more we realize how much we're all in this together. So let's keep learning, sharing, and creating one imperfect, messy step at a time. That's all for now. Take care, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.